What if I told you that Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in modern psychology, discovered something truly terrifying about narcissists? Not just the lies, not just the gaslighting, but one final manipulation. A psychological move so subtle yet so devastating, it can undo years of your healing in just a matter of weeks. And here's the truly frightening part: most people never see it coming. You see, when a narcissist realizes they can no longer control you, when you've grown set boundaries and started standing in your truth, they don't just walk away. They don't give up. Instead, they launch one last calculated assault on your mind and your soul. A final test. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, you will walk right into their trap and lose everything you fought so hard to rebuild. That's why this video is not just another talk about toxic relationships. It's a warning, but more importantly, it's a map. Before we reveal this final psychological trick, a tactic Jung himself believed could shatter your inner progress, we have to understand the layers of manipulation that lead up to it. Because narcissists don't start with the big guns. They slowly erode your sense of self, often without you even realizing it. And by the time they reach this last move, it's because every other tactic has failed, and you're finally becoming someone they can no longer control. Carl Jung spent decades studying what he called the shadow, the hidden, often suppressed parts of ourselves. But what happens when someone refuses to face their own shadow and instead projects it onto you? That's where the real danger begins. So let me ask you this: have you ever felt like someone was subtly attacking the very parts of you that made you stronger? Have you ever found yourself questioning your growth because someone told you you've changed, and not in a good way? That's not by accident. That's the beginning of the narcissist's final play. Stay with me, because once you understand the steps leading to this moment and how Carl Jung's insights unlock the hidden patterns behind it, you'll not only see the trap, you'll finally be free of it. Let's talk about something Carl Jung called the power inversion crisis. Because this right here is the turning point. It's the exact moment when everything starts to shift in your relationship with a narcissist. See, we often assume that narcissists are most afraid of rejection, of abandonment, of being exposed. But Jung discovered something deeper, something far more unsettling. Their biggest fear isn't losing you, it's losing control over you. And the moment you begin healing, when you stop seeking their validation, start setting boundaries, and slowly reclaim your identity, something starts to crack inside them. That's when the real war begins. Carl Jung believed that when you grow psychologically stronger than your manipulator, it creates a kind of crisis for them. He called it a power inversion, because everything they thought they had over you flips. Think about it. For so long, they've seen you as someone they can mold, influence, push and pull at will. You were their emotional supplier, their validation machine. They knew what to say to trigger your guilt, how to pull your strings, and what buttons to push to keep you second-guessing yourself. But healing breaks that pattern. When you begin to say, "No, I'm not okay with this," or "That doesn't feel right to me," something in their psychological structure panics. Because to a narcissist, power isn't just part of the relationship, it is the relationship. And when that power dynamic begins to shift, they feel like their identity is slipping through their fingers. Let me give you an example. I once spoke to a woman who had spent years trying to please her narcissistic partner. She changed her appearance, muted her voice, abandoned her dreams, just to keep the peace. But after months of therapy and inner work, she started speaking up. She said no. She started reconnecting with friends, rebuilding her confidence, even laughing again. And do you know what happened? Her partner didn't celebrate her growth. He panicked. He accused her of becoming arrogant, cold, and ungrateful. Not because she was doing anything wrong, but because he could feel the power slipping away. That's the power inversion crisis Jung was talking about. It's when your strength doesn't just threaten their control, it threatens their entire identity. Because here's what most people miss. Narcissists aren't just insecure people who want attention. They operate from what Jung called the inflated ego, a false self-image that depends on dominating others to avoid confronting their own inner emptiness. So when you start standing tall in your truth, you become more than just a threat. You become a mirror reflecting everything they've refused to face within themselves. And that's terrifying to them. But for you, it's the most important moment in your healing journey. Because this is when you'll be tested the most. Not when you're weak, but when you're strong. This is when they'll try to pull you back. Not with obvious abuse, but with guilt, nostalgia, and emotional traps. And if you're not prepared, if you don't understand what's really happening, you might mistake this crisis as a sign to fix the relationship, or worse, go back to the old version of you. But don't, because here's the truth. If your healing makes someone uncomfortable, if your boundaries make someone feel threatened, then maybe the problem was never you. Maybe the person they loved was the version of you who didn't love yourself yet. And now that you do, you've changed the game. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, is the most powerful act of liberation there is. So when a narcissist panics in the face of your strength, don't shrink. That panic is proof you're finally becoming someone they can't control. And that, my friend, is where real freedom begins. Now here's where it gets even more dangerous. Once a narcissist senses that the power dynamic is shifting, that you're no longer easy to manipulate, that you're beginning to stand in your truth, they don't just let go. They don't apologize. They escalate. Carl Jung described this next phase of manipulation as projection warfare. And trust me, once you see it for what it is, you'll never unsee it again. Projection, in psychological terms, is when someone takes the parts of themselves they dislike or can't consciously accept and projects them onto someone else. It's like looking into a mirror, but refusing to see your own reflection, and instead blaming the other person for what's actually inside you. And narcissists are experts at this. They take their own insecurity, their own shame, their own fear of being exposed, and they place it on you. But here's the twist. They don't attack your weaknesses. They go after your strengths. That's what makes this tactic so insidious. Let's say you've been working on setting boundaries. Maybe for the first time in your life you say, "No, I can't do that," or "That doesn't feel right to me." What happens? Suddenly you're selfish. You've changed. You used to care more. Or maybe you're finally speaking up, owning your voice. You're no longer shrinking in conversations or over-explaining your emotions. Now you're too aggressive. You always need to be right. You're so combative now. Or you've built confidence after years of self-doubt. You hold your head higher. You walk with clarity. Now you're full of yourself. You think you're better than everyone. Sound familiar? Carl Jung called this strength shaming, the act of making someone feel guilty or ashamed of the exact qualities that are helping them heal, grow, and liberate themselves. Let that sink in for a second. This isn't just random criticism. It's a targeted attack on the parts of you that have evolved. It's like the narcissist is saying, "I don't want you weak because I hate you. I want you weak because it makes me feel safe." And that's the key. Your strength, your independence reminds them of what they've avoided facing in themselves, their own shadow, their own pain, their own inner emptiness. Instead of looking inward, they lash outward. And here's why this tactic is so powerful. It preys on your old wounds. The parts of you that used to second-guess everything. The part that was taught to make everyone else comfortable, even if it meant abandoning yourself. So when someone accuses you of being selfish, just because you're finally protecting your peace, a part of you might believe them, especially if that guilt was planted long ago. But here's what I want you to remember. You don't have to apologize for growing. You don't have to explain why you're no longer tolerating emotional manipulation. You don't owe anyone a watered-down version of yourself just to keep the peace. Because true peace isn't found in pleasing everyone. It's found in being honest with yourself first. And if someone feels threatened by your healing, by your boundaries, by your voice, that says more about their wounds than your worth. I'll leave you with this question, one that Jung's work often points us toward. Are you shrinking to keep someone else comfortable? Or are you expanding into who you were always meant to be? When a narcissist launches projection warfare, when they try to shame the exact strengths that brought you back to life, don't shrink. Recognize it for what it is, fear dressed up as judgment. And remind yourself, you didn't come this far to feel guilty for becoming whole. Let's talk about one of the most subtle and emotionally confusing forms of manipulation Carl Jung ever described: nostalgic manipulation. It doesn't come with yelling. It doesn't come with blame. It comes with a quiet, almost loving tone. And it sounds like this: you used to laugh so much more. I miss the old you before all the therapy and boundaries. Remember how close we used to be before everything changed. Now on the surface, these words can seem caring, even sweet. They can stir up memories, soften your heart, make you wonder, have I really changed that much? Was I better back then? But here's what's really happening, according to Carl Jung. This is not someone remembering you. It's someone remembering the version of you that was easier to control. It's what Jung called a kind of psychological time travel tactic, where the narcissist reaches into your emotional past not to connect, but to regress you. Let me explain. When you begin healing, when you start setting boundaries, reclaiming your time, your energy, your voice, it often means changing the dynamics in your relationships. You might say no more often. You might stop over-explaining yourself. You might no longer tolerate passive-aggressive remarks, guilt-tripping, or emotional blackmail. To healthy people, that shift is a sign of growth. But to narcissists, it feels like a threat. Why? Because the version of you before the one who bent over backward, who said yes even when it hurt, who made yourself smaller to keep the peace that version served their control. And so instead of confronting their own discomfort with your growth, they try to pull you back emotionally into a time when you were more pliable. They dress it up in nostalgia. But it's not genuine longing. It's a strategic manipulation. And it works because nostalgia is powerful. Think about it. We're wired to remember the past through rose-colored glasses. We romanticize what felt familiar. We second-guess ourselves when someone we once trusted says, "You were happier back then." But here's the deeper truth. You weren't happier. You were quieter. You weren't more loving. You were more afraid of conflict. You weren't more agreeable. You were just more willing to abandon yourself to keep the peace. That's the version of you they're missing. The one who didn't yet know how to say, "This hurts me." The one who hadn't learned to ask, "What do I need?" Let me give you an example. A client once told me about her mother, how every time she started asserting herself or living more freely, her mom would say, "I just miss my sweet girl. You used to call me every day." We were so close before you got so independent. At first, it made her feel guilty, like maybe her growth was selfish. But eventually she realized her mom wasn't missing connection. She was missing control. And that's what nostalgic manipulation does. It disguises emotional control as love. Now, I'm not saying people can't miss certain things about us. But here's the question you must always ask yourself. Are they missing my essence or my compliance? Because those are two very different things. When someone loves you, the real you, they support your evolution, even when it means the relationship has to grow or change too. But when someone only values the version of you that stayed quiet, agreeable, and self-sacrificing, that's not love. That's convenience. Jung believed that one of the great spiritual tasks of life is individuation, becoming who you truly are, not who others want you to be. So when someone tries to emotionally rewind you, that's not love pulling you closer. That's fear pulling you backward. And the most dangerous part, if you're not grounded in your healing nostalgia, can become a trap. You might start missing the old version of yourself too, not because it was better, but because it was familiar. So here's what I want you to remember. You are not obligated to return to a smaller version of yourself just to make someone else more comfortable. Growth can be lonely. It can be misunderstood. But it is always worth it. And the next time someone says, "I miss the old," you try responding with something like, "I understand that change can feel uncomfortable, but I'm proud of who I'm becoming." Because if someone truly values you, they'll learn to love the person you are today, not the one you had to be to survive yesterday. Now we've come to the most dangerous tactic of all, the one that Carl Jung believed could undo everything you've worked so hard to build. It's called manufactured vulnerability. And make no mistake, it's not weakness. It's a strategy, a calculated move, a final attempt to reclaim control. Right when you think you've finally broken free. Let me ask you this. Have you ever found the courage to walk away from a toxic relationship, only to have that person suddenly fall apart? Maybe they call you crying, saying they're sick. Maybe they show up with a crisis, money problems, family drama, or emotional breakdowns. Suddenly, the person who once seemed so powerful now seems fragile. It feels real. It feels urgent. It feels like they need you. But what if that need was manufactured? Carl Jung observed something deeply unsettling in his studies of manipulation. That narcissists, especially when they sense they're losing control, will weaponize your compassion. They'll create or exaggerate a crisis, not because they want help, but because they want you. Specifically, they want the version of you that drops everything, that bends your boundaries, that becomes the caregiver again. And they time it perfectly, right when you're getting stronger. That's not an accident. Jung believed these individuals keep detailed mental notes about you. They know what makes you feel guilty. They know exactly what tugs on your empathy. They know how far they can push before you break your own rules just this once. And that's the moment they move in. It might sound like I know you're busy, but I'm in a really dark place right now. I know you said you needed space, but I don't have anyone else to talk to. Please don't walk away from me right now. I'm scared. Suddenly, all your hard-earned boundaries start to feel cruel. All the progress you've made starts to feel selfish. And here's the terrifying truth Jung uncovered. Sometimes they create the very chaos they're now asking you to rescue them from. They self-sabotage. They neglect their responsibilities. They start fights. And then they turn to you, the only one who understands, and beg for help. Why? Because it accomplishes two things. 1. It pulls you back into the role of caretaker, just like before. 2. It proves to them that deep down, they still have power over you. And it works because, unlike traditional manipulation, this doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like a cry for help. But Jung warned us, that's what makes it so dangerous. Because in those moments, you might forget something critical, that your healing didn't come from abandoning people. It came from finally choosing yourself. And now they're asking you to hand that growth back. Not directly, but with emotional bait. They say, I know you don't usually lend money, but this is different. I know you've changed, but can't you be the old you, just this once? I know you need space, but I really need you right now. And what they're really asking is this: will you prove that I still matter more than your own peace? If you say yes, even once, it tells them, you can still override my healing with your crisis. That's why Carl Jung believed this tactic was so destructive. Not because it's always fake, sometimes the pain is real, but because it's selectively shared, designed to target your heart, not your head. And if you fall for it, you risk collapsing the very foundation you've built. So what can you do? Jung offered a powerful concept: differentiated compassion. It means this: you can care deeply for someone without sacrificing yourself in the process. You can offer kindness without offering your soul. You can acknowledge their pain while still protecting your peace. So the next time someone shows up in crisis, ask yourself, is helping them now helping me become who I truly am? Or is it pulling me back into who I fought so hard to stop being? That one question can save you years of emotional regression. Because when a narcissist starts using their pain as a leash, it's not about healing. It's about control. And your ability to see that clearly without guilt is the real mark of your growth. You don't have to prove your kindness by bleeding for people who cut you. You don't have to abandon your healing to earn someone's love. You've done that already. Now it's time to protect what you've built. Let's talk about 5 simple words that can quietly undo years of inner work. Can you do it just this once? Now, on the surface, that phrase seems harmless, even reasonable. Someone's asking for help. You want to be kind. You want to be flexible. You think, it's just one time, what's the harm? But if you've ever dealt with a narcissist or anyone who thrives on emotional control, those 5 words are anything but innocent. Carl Jung believed that true healing isn't just about gaining insight. It's about protecting the boundaries that keep you aligned with who you're becoming. And when someone says just this once, what they're often really asking is, will you break your boundary for me to prove I still have power over you? Let me give you an example. Imagine you've set a firm rule with yourself: no more lending money to someone who's repeatedly taken advantage of your generosity. You've finally drawn the line. Then, here it comes. I know you don't usually lend money, but this time is different. I promise I'll pay you back. Just this once. Or maybe you've established emotional distance from a toxic ex, and they show up in your inbox. I know you said you need space, but I'm going through something right now. I just need you. Just this once. And here's where the trap tightens. Because what they're offering isn't just a request. It's an emotional test. They're testing your limits, testing whether your boundaries are rooted in self-respect or still flexible under pressure. According to Jung, these small moments, these seemingly minor exceptions, aren't minor at all. They're psychological wedges. Each one chips away at the identity you're trying to build. And every time you say yes just this once, you're sending yourself a silent message. My healing is negotiable. Let that sink in, because the truth is, people who truly respect you won't pressure you to compromise your peace. They won't ask you to betray yourself for their comfort. They won't turn your kindness into a key to unlock old wounds. But narcissists, they thrive on inconsistency. They don't need full control to feel powerful, just enough influence to prove they still matter more than your growth. And here's where it gets deeper. When you've been conditioned through guilt trauma or people-pleasing to prioritize others over yourself, just this once doesn't feel like a boundary violation. It feels like love. It feels like connection. It feels familiar. But that's the danger. Because what you're actually doing is repeating the pattern that hurt you in the first place, trading your truth for someone else's approval. Jung warned us the ego doesn't like change. It clings to old roles, old labels, old versions of who we were. And when someone offers us a shortcut back into the caretaker role, a part of us deep down might want to say yes. Not because it's right, but because it's known. So here's the question I want you to sit with. If I say yes to this, what part of me am I betraying? And if the answer is your boundary, your peace, your healing, or your self-worth, then the cost is too high. One of the most powerful things you can do on your journey is to stand by your no. Not out of anger, not out of punishment, but out of love for yourself, for your future, for the person you're becoming. Because every time you protect your boundaries, even when it's hard, even when it feels cold or cruel or unfamiliar, you're telling your inner child, your higher self, your wounded heart, I've got you now. I won't abandon you again. So the next time someone says just this once, pause. Take a breath. And remember, this is not a moment of guilt. This is a moment of power. You don't owe anyone your peace to prove you still care. You've already proven enough. There's a moment in every healing journey where the truth finally clicks, and when it does, it can shake you to your core. It's this: the narcissist didn't come to you because you're the only person who could help. They came to you because they knew you were the one most likely to sacrifice yourself to do it. Let that sink in for a second. Carl Jung called this the weaponization of empathy. And it's one of the most subtle and soul-crushing forms of psychological manipulation. Because here's the truth, narcissists often have plenty of people around them. Friends, co-workers, family members, even professionals they could reach out to. But they don't go to them when things fall apart. They come to you. Why? Because they know your empathy is wide open. Because they've studied you. Because they've watched how you always put others before yourself. And most of all, because you've done it before. Maybe you're the one who stayed up all night comforting them during their last breakdown. Maybe you were the one who bailed them out financially more than once. Or maybe every time you started choosing yourself, they found a way to remind you that they still needed you. And somewhere inside, a part of you believed them. Because you're kind. Because you're loyal. Because you're the person who can't turn away when someone's in pain, even when it's hurting you to stay. That's what makes this tactic so devastating. Jung observed that narcissists are masters at identifying the emotional keys that unlock your compassion. They know exactly which stories pull at your heart. They know which phrases ignite your guilt. They know the version of you that's still trying to prove you're a good person by helping the wrong people. So they don't have to beg. They just present the crisis and trust that you'll step in. But here's what Jung wanted us to see. This isn't just a pattern of manipulation. It's a mirror reflecting back the very wounds we haven't healed within ourselves. Because for many of us, our empathy wasn't born in safety. It was born in survival. We learned that love meant fixing, that value meant sacrificing, that being needed was the closest we'd ever get to being seen. So when someone shows up broken, even manipulative, We don't just feel pulled to help, we feel responsible. And that's exactly what the narcissist is counting on. They don't need a savior. They need someone who still believes that saving others is the only way to matter. But you are not here to be drained. You are not here to bleed emotionally for someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own healing. And you are not here to be chosen only when someone needs something from you. So let me ask you, who's calling the shots in your compassion? Is it your conscious self, the one that knows your limits, your worth, your boundaries? Or is it the part of you that still feels guilty for choosing peace over chaos? Jung believed that true freedom comes not from shutting down our empathy, but from learning how to protect it. Because when you give your empathy to people who misuse it, you're not being loving. You're being used. And deep down, you know this. You felt the exhaustion, the resentment, the quiet heartbreak of watching someone take, and never truly change. So here's the invitation: you can still be kind without being consumed. You can still be caring without collapsing. You can still show up for others, but only after you've shown up for yourself. Because the real test isn't whether you're willing to help someone in need. It's whether you're willing to say no when that help costs you your sanity, your healing, your life force. And the moment you say, "I love you, but I will not abandon myself for you anymore," is the moment you reclaim the power they tried to steal. That's the line they never wanted you to draw. And once you do, everything changes. So now we arrive at the part that matters most, the part where you choose what happens next. You've seen the patterns. You've recognized the traps. You've felt the emotional hooks buried inside every "just this once," every guilt trip, every manufactured breakdown. But the real question is, what do you do now? Carl Jung offered a powerful concept that can guide you in moments like these. He called it differentiated compassion. It means you can care for someone's pain without carrying it. You can feel empathy without feeling responsible for their healing. You can be loving without losing yourself. Because, let's be honest, when you've spent years being the rescuer, the fixer, the emotional sponge, it feels wrong to say no. It feels selfish. But the truth is, saying no to someone else's chaos is often the most loving thing you can do for both of you. So when the narcissist tries to pull you back in, when they whisper old lines that used to work on the version of you that hadn't yet awakened, ask yourself, is helping them right now helping me become who I truly am? Or is it pulling me back into who I used to be? Because Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And becoming who you truly are will always require leaving behind the roles you played just to survive. You are not here to be their emotional crutch. You are not here to be drained so they can feel powerful. You are here to become whole. And here's something we don't say enough. Narcissists don't fear your rejection. They fear your strength. Why? Because your strength reminds them of a truth they're not ready to face. That they too could choose growth. But instead, they chose control. And every time you say no to their tactics, every time you hold your boundary, every time you stay rooted in your peace, instead of reaching back into their chaos, you're showing them something they can't unsee. That the power they thought they had over you was never real. It was borrowed from your fear, from your guilt, from your belief that love meant self-sacrifice. But now, you know better. And here's the truth that will set you free. Their final manipulation only works if you forget who you are. Only if you shrink. Only if you doubt your own healing. But now you've seen it. Now you know. Their desperation to control you is proof of how powerful you've already become. So don't give that power away. Walk forward not as a person still needing to be needed, but as someone who finally knows you are enough, even when you say no. You are whole, even when you're not helping. You are free, even when they're falling apart. Because real love never asks you to abandon yourself. And real strength is not in rescuing others, it's in rescuing yourself, and never apologizing for it.